Today we will be looking at the male gaze, a term coined by Laura Mulvey in her 1975 psychoanalytical essay named Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. You might be thinking, what is the male gaze? Well, the male gaze is a feminist term for when feminine depiction is displayed in a heterosexual, masculine perspective, often objectifying, sexualizing and/or stereotyping the subject whilst empowering the male. The male gaze can often be found in film, art and music. Laura Mulvey's essay was under the basis of film, looking at the following. Utilising Freud and Lankin's theories as political weapons, film form being subconsciously structured by a patriarchal society, Hollywood being an inherently sexist enterprise, giving examples of the male gaze, cinema pleasure being a measure of relation between the spectator and on-screen, blaming not only sexist directors but also sexist film study, symbolic female castration, the importance of psychoanalysis, and the male gaze seeping into the workplace, politics and general society. There are many examples of the male gaze within art and creativity. Let's look at some of them. Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Aveyron depicts 5 naked prostitutes he painted whilst visiting a brothel. The women illustrated serve no purpose other than to satisfy the artist's gaze. The women stare at the viewer, encouraging the reinforcement of the power-related hierarchy, and exist just as sexual objects to the scenario provided, enforcing the idea that they are subservient. Titan Vallelio's Venus of Urbino shows Venus laying naked and staring at the viewer. The painting is said to display the message of marriage. Furthermore, the woman is displayed in a stereotypical ideal form, set as an object for the male desire. Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. In this film, Harley is often used to satisfy the male gaze. The scene displayed involves Harley getting changed whilst the camera slowly pans over her body parts, dehumanizing and objectifying each part of her. Then the camera cuts to a wide shot in which the other protagonists, who are male, are gazing at her getting changed. This enforces the idea that it's okay for the female to be dehumanized and sexualized for the male viewers and characters' gain. Yet, it is important to highlight that the male gaze often then seeps into general society and subconsciously influences thoughts, feelings, and decisions. This is because individuals often act out what they see in film and creativity. This can be extremely harmful as the idea of the male gaze sets to attack women's self-perception and self-esteem by pushing them to feel set out, male-deciding conditions. I asked 14 women if they feel the male gaze has an effect on them and society as a whole. Can you guess how many said yes? Was it 8, 13 or 6? The correct answer is 13. When people are fed a constant perception under the male gaze, they tend to gain an objectified view of women at large. The gaze can be internalised by any gender and can have huge impact. Under the male gaze, black women are often overly sexualized, and Asian and queer women are often fetishized. Many argue that the male gaze has huge impact on mental health amongst women and point to it being a catalyst for mental health conditions such as depression, eating disorders, anxiety, and more. A survey by Calogero found that self-objectification increases body shame, disrupts attention, and negatively predicts well-being. The study also noticed how objectifying perspective led to increased anxiety within appearance and reduced mindfulness of internal body cues. So, you might be thinking, is there a female gaze? The female gaze is far more complex to the male gaze and is not just a mirror concept to its counterpart. It is a feminist response to Mulvey's theory and aims to display the world from a female perspective, focusing on emotion, feminine issues, and more, instead of objectifying the man for female pleasure. It also aims to show the viewer how it feels to be an object of the gaze. To further our understanding of the female gaze, let's look at a few examples. Cindy Sherman. Cindy Sherman is an American photographer who has often critiqued the portrayal of female identity and societal stereotypes through creative personas, physically taking on and challenging these roles. She is the guise within her work, playing hundreds of different characters, forming subjective and individual tales whilst questioning the complexities of identity, the status quo, and more. Jenny Saville. Saville explores the naked female form through her large-scale paintings. Raw and unapologetic, she highlights society and its blurred depictions of the true female form, pointing to natural and beautiful imperfections such as cellulite. Her work takes a look at reconstructing the unrealistic and often male-dominated gaze on female bodies, challenging society in each and every turn. Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey. You might be thinking, didn't we previously look at Harley embodying the male gaze through film media such as Suicide Squad? Well, female director Cathy Yan turned previous depictions of the famous DC character on their head. In the 2020 film Birds of Prey, Harley is given further backstory and personality, displaying her as an individual being through shots instead of a sexualized object. She is no longer placed in the story for the male desire, but to give a further insight to the character and general story. Many argue that the female gaze is an essential counter to the male gaze. What do you think? Throughout this video, we have consistently seen the relevance of the male gaze within creativity and culture, looking at influences and examples. It is essential to note the prominence of the male gaze within art and culture we digest in everyday society. So, to end off, one must ask themselves, how has the male gaze influenced me as an individual?